So good morning and welcome to our online webinar, Creativity is a New Power. So my name is Sarah Haffenden and I'm the Marketing Communications Manager at UKZN Extended Learning, also known as UEL. So in case you are unfamiliar with UEL, we are the continuing education unit of the University of KwaZulu-Natal and we offer all the short courses on behalf of the university. So we introduced these webinars as we were in full support and compliance with the directive of a national lockdown issued to address the COVID-19 pandemic. So we launched a number of projects which were aimed at providing free access to learning materials during this lockdown period. The online learning webinars are one of these projects, and they will continue throughout September, once a week on a Tuesday, and from October will be offered once a month on a Tuesday at 10 a.m. So please do take a look at our final slide at the end of this webinar for further details on our next webinar, or you can visit our websites at www.ukznextendedlearning.com. So please note that due to the nature of this webinar, we will not be able to raise hands and questions throughout the presentation. So please would you post all comments and questions in the Q&A box, and these will be addressed at the end of the webinar. So we'll also allow for live questions at the end of the webinar. If you have a question you'd like to ask live, you can raise your hand and we'll open up your mic and you can ask that question. So I'd now like to introduce you to our guest speaker for today, Professor Ziska Fields. So Ziska is an associate professor in the College of Business and Economics at the Department of Business Management at the University of Johannesburg. Prof. Fields is an alumna at the University of KwaZulu-Natal and an external researcher and habilitator at the Chair of Innovation Research and Technology Management, Chemnitz University of Technology. She's an advisory board member and ambassador for the World Creativity and Innovation Week and World Creativity and Innovation Day in South Africa, as well as some Southern African countries like Namibia and Botswana for 2021. Her main research focus area and passion is theoretical and applied creativity across various disciplines and contexts. She developed 2 theoretical models to measure creativity in South Africa, focusing on youth and tertiary education. So welcome, Ziska, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and a warm welcome to everyone who's listening today. We're going to tackle a topic that is kind of controversial in the sense that some people might agree with the concept of creativity as a new power, and some might disagree. So before we actually start this webinar, there's a poll that I would like you to take just to get a feel of your view in terms of this topic. So the question is, I believe that creativity is a power in the 21st century. You can say no, knowledge is power. No, creativity without knowledge is not power. Yes, creativity is power in the 21st century. And I do not believe that creativity can be power at all in the 21st century. So let me see what your views are. I will give a minute, if that's okay. Don't be shy, let me know. There's no right or wrong answer. We will talk about it as we progress in the webinar. So just state how you feel. What is the first answer that pops into your head?
We have about 86% who voted so far, so those last few, if you would like to vote, we'll give you a 5-second countdown.
Yeah, you can give us a 10-second countdown, Sarah. That's 100%. Thank you.
Okay, it's from 10 now. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, results. I see that I don't really need to convince anyone because the majority says that yes, creativity is power in the 21st century. And then there's also another opinion that is also very good, and that is that it says creativity without knowledge is not power. So we will be discussing this, and at the end, you will know exactly what the aim of this webinar was, and in terms of where creativity fits into the 21st century. All right, So we can close the poll and let's start with our webinar. Okay, so what is the problem that we are facing? And basically, it is a VUCA world on steroids. Now, you might wonder, what is VUCA? And I think a lot of you have heard about the concept of VUCA, which means that the world is very volatile. It's very unpredictable. It's difficult to control. And if we look at climate change and at COVID-19, for example, we can see that that is actually an environment that you need to react to very quickly, but it's unpredictable as well. It's uncertain because you don't know if the actions that you are taking is actually the correct actions. And then it's also very complex because you might try to fix something, but then there's many other interdependencies that can happen. And obviously, it's very ambiguous. So the world we live in is not a very easy world. And it's also not a very easy world for business or leaders. Then to add to the issue is that there's a lot of wicked problems. And in the last webinar last week, I elaborated on what a wicked problem is. And it's basically a problem that's very difficult to solve because you cannot define what the exact problem is. Then, if you are actually thinking about solutions, there's a lot of different stakeholders that you need to consider before you can come up with a possible plan. And then even if you implement the plan, there's a lot of interconnections and unintended consequences that you might not have thought about. So all this is kind of making our world more complex and difficult. In addition to that, we are also in the time of the fourth industrial revolution, where we speak about the rise of the machine, about robotics, about artificial intelligence. And all that is very good. However, when machines and AI actually are developed, their algorithms basically look at past patterns of behavior. So if we go to machines or to AI or to robotics to find answers to problems that we're facing today, they will give us some solutions in the past. So because they're looking at historical data. So that is also an issue that we need to deal with. In addition, most companies focuses on the task and the process in the business. They don't really focus on developing creativity. And most of the organizations will also not refer to creativity when they have board meetings or discussions with staff. They will rather refer to innovation. And that is also a challenge because where does innovation come from? And surely creativity is where innovation comes from. So if we don't focus on creativity, our innovative actions will not be as good as we want to. And then knowledge lost its power in the 21st century because everything is now available on Google. If you don't know something, you can Google it. Knowledge, information is all around us and we can get it very quickly. However, knowledge alone needs to be considered as something that has lost its power. And I will talk about knowledge a bit later because to make knowledge valuable in the 21st century is about how you learn as well as how you apply the knowledge that you actually have. So the application is more important than the knowledge itself. Another challenge is that creative literacy and the ability to express our creativity is also not really encouraged in most of the businesses and in most of the places we actually work, go to school, go to university, and so forth. So we can see that VUCA, wicked problems, rise of the machine, the fourth industrial revolution, knowledge in itself, and then the lack of focus on creativity can cause a challenge for us and actually don't help us to deal with the future environment that we are in. Now, the World Economic Forum and McKinsey & Co. stated that social and emotional and higher cognitive skills, and specifically critical thinking and creativity, and looking at information from a specific critical point of view, is very important for our future, especially as we move into this automated future where robotics and artificial intelligence becomes more important. The World Economic Forum also stated that creativity is one of the 3 most important skills to have, and they actually went up to 2022, where they actually said that that's the third most important skill. As we move on, creativity in itself are being referred to in the form of fluency and idea generation rather than just the concept of creativity. So creativity is something that all humans have. We are actually born with creativity, and as we go through life and we go through school and we go through our adult life, we are basically put in little boxes and we identify ourselves in different perspectives, and we kind of lose our ability to play, our ability to see things from new perspectives. And that is very important for the World Economic Forum and McKinsey & Co. is that we should not actually lose our creativity, but rather focus on developing it because of the fact that it's so important for our future. Creativity also have the ability to disrupt world economies. Now that basically referred to the fact that if you are creative, you can actually think about things that doesn't exist, is the one thing. The other thing is that if there is an issue or a problem, you can actually use creativity to think about other ways to solve it, and you can actually envision how it can impact on what you are doing and the plans that you come up with. So creativity is a power, if we can say it at this stage. Robotics and artificial intelligence cannot be creative at this point. Yes, people have taught artificial intelligence how to produce art, but art alone is not creativity. So the creative power that humans have, that is our power against an automated world. That is what is going to create work for us, and that is what is going to make the world a better place if creativity is used for good. And as we know, anything can be used for good or bad. So creativity can be used for bad things as well. And therefore, if we want to go and be successful and have a better life and protect the planet for our children, it is very important that we look at creativity as a source of good. And then creativity, why it is so critical for us is that it can help us to solve complex problems. It can help us to look at wicked problems because we look at the unique perceptions of the problem. We look at different ways of how we can actually manage a specific problem. And our ability to solve problems, complex problems with complex critical thinking, cannot be replicated by machines. Machines can also not share knowledge at this point in time. Yes, there's learning machines. They can learn at a specific point, but one machine cannot carry over their consciousness to another machine. And that is also something that is quite unique to humans, is that our human nature, our ability to share, our ability to think about unique things, our ability to create is what makes us powerful. And we should actually use that to deal with the future that we are facing. So, based on the discussion thus far, creativity is power from my perspective. And I want you to also think about what I've said thus far. Is it convincing you that it is actually creativity that is the power that we are looking for in terms of enhancing our future, or is it not? Now, Albert Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge, because knowledge is limited to all we know and understand, which is the truth. So we are basically learning what already exists. We are not learning something new unless we use our imagination and we start researching something to come up with unique answers to problems. And that is why imagination is so important, because it embraces the entire world and all that we know and understand. And we will get back to the concept of imagination as well. I also want you to focus on the statement below, where if you have ideas but don't act on them, all right, then you are only imaginative, but you are not creative. Now, there's always the question now, creativity happens in your mind. It is about coming up with a lot of ideas and so forth. So surely these ideas are not yet put into action, but it is not correct. And I will talk about it as we go through. So imagination is just having ideas, but not acting on it. Now, when I talk about creativity, there's a lot of elements that's part of creativity. First of all, creativity starts with imagination. Now, imagination is our ability to think about things that is novel, that doesn't exist. We don't even need our senses to actually provide inputs for us to understand what's happening in our mind. It also draws beautiful visuals, and it can tell a story, and we can participate in the story and even get lost in our imagination. Creativity is what makes imagination happen. So that is where the previous statement comes from, where imagination is just the ideas, but when it's turned into something that we can act on, that is where creativity comes in. And then ultimately, creativity is necessary to become innovative. So innovation is very important because now we can take all these ideas and all the things that we developed and we can put it into practice. We can create something of value. We can change the world. We can develop a product or a service that can actually have a positive impact on the world as we know it. So basically, creativity is the bridge between our imagination and innovation. And we can be creative and not innovative, but we cannot be innovative without having an imagination and being creative. So that is why I'm saying that if businesses only focuses on the concept of innovation, then they are losing out on the imagination that the staff have or leadership, as well as turning those ideas into creative ideas that can actually be tested and then turned into something of value, which is the focus of a business, is to make money and produce something that our customers would want to buy and use. Now, what is creativity really, if we have to unpack the concept? Now, in literature, there's a lot of different definitions of creativity. Every specific focus area or every field of study looks at creativity from a different perspective, and they actually define creativity from that perspective. But in a nutshell, I'm just going to give you a few words in which I would like us to look at creativity today. So creativity is basically a cognitive skill, and it actually needs our imagination. And with the imagination, it helps us to produce something that's new or novel. Because just think about it. If you can imagine something, it means that it's something new, that it's something unique. Because in your imagination, you're free of constraints. You can come up with anything, and everything can work in your imagination. So imagination basically sparks that cognitive skill of being creative. And normally, creativity is also the ability to react to external challenges. So that is why I'm saying in a VUCA world, or when we are faced with wicked problems, creativity can come in and help us to actually react to the forces that is around us. Creativity is also a way of solving problems. And I think that for me is basically the best view of creativity, is where it solves problems because we are able to see things from different perspectives. It also helps us to come up with new rules. It helps us to do things in better ways. It can help us to think about the consequences in the future. For example, when the cell phone was created, nobody really thought about now what will happen in 5, 10, 20 years from now if everyone has got a cell phone. How do we get rid of this white pollution that we have? The same with the masks that's currently being used for COVID-19. It was seen as a solution, everyone wants to wear a mask. but nobody actually, maybe there were people, but most people didn't consider the fact of how do we get rid of these materials now if we cannot use it anymore, because you cannot use COVID-19 products for a long time. It is disposable and you need fresh material, so to say, almost every day. So this has become a polluting problem in the oceans currently. So if we use our creativity and if we think of the problems, not only solving a problem immediately, but rather what is the effect of the way that we're solving it now, and how can we prevent future problems from happening from the solutions that we created today. Another thing that is wonderful about creativity is that it can put you in a childlike state. Now, a lot of people will say, but Ziska, I'm an adult. I don't want to be a child. Why do I want to be a child? Why do I want to be in a childlike state? And I would actually like to challenge you to actually just walk with a small child in the garden, and you will see how amazed this child will get when they see a little butterfly or a worm or a little flower. They look at it from a different perspective of awe, of beauty that we as adults, we don't see. And we miss a lot of things because we're not in that state. And because we're so focused on getting the job done, getting a salary, looking after our children, we kind of miss out on generating ideas that can actually be very valuable for us as people, but also for us as society and communities. So therefore, creativity is about going back to that childlike state and connecting with your inner child. Then we also must not think about creativity as something that you can do out of nothing. So it is not the creation out of nothing. Only God can create. But what we do in the creative process is we can copy from somebody, we can transform something, we can turn it into something else, we can combine an idea, and that actually creates another view of something that has been created. So creativity can help us to come up with different, unique things by just combining things that's not normally combined. And we can copy, but we can still create something original out of the copy. So that in a nutshell is what is creativity. However, I personally don't just believe in creativity as defined in the slide. I truly believe in whole brain creativity. Now, whole brain creativity is where you use both sides of your brain. You don't just focus on the right side, where you think of being an artist, a visionary, synthesizing things, and that is the only part that you are using to be creative. No. To be truly creative, you need to connect both sides of the brain. All four quadrants need to work together. So the first step in your whole brain creativity will obviously be to frame a problem, to actually look at the idea that you are exploring. And that is where knowledge comes in. So you need to find out what is happening, what is the problem, and apply critical thinking, basically, to frame your specific issue that you want to solve. Then only you come to your artistic intelligence, where you start using your imagination, you start envisioning possible problems and solutions, you are basically dreaming up different ideas, and you start sharing different ideas. However, that's not where it stops. And normally people will say, but that is creativity. We came up with as lot of ideas as possible, and now it's over. No, it's not. Your third step now needs to be, what is the impact of the ideas that you've created on others? So you need to think of your relationship with other people. You need to collaborate. You need to co-create with other people. You as an individual can learn a lot from the creativity of other people. So once you co-create, once you start sharing, you can create something wonderful in terms of your creative output. And then finally, you need to now put your ideas into practice. So now you cannot just leave it by saying, okay, we identified the problem, we came up with ideas, we looked at how it impacts on society, on people, on the environment, blah, blah, blah. But now you need to put it into action. And that is where your planning and organizing comes in. So that is why I believe that creativity should be a whole brain activity. It is not only a right brain activity. And this is the creativity that I'm also focusing on today. This is the creativity that I call creativity is power. All right. So why is creativity so important, you might ask? Now, I just want to take you back. It's not too long ago, but when COVID-19 started to impact on our personal lives, we had to undergo a lot of change. We had to do things totally different than what we were used to. And the fourth industrial revolution was actually pushed forward due to the fact that we were forced into isolation and we still had to find a way of working. So their change makes us creative because it requires us to do something different. And that is where our creative juices start flowing. So how can we do it better? How can we do it in a different way? So basically looking at Edward de Bono's quote is that he sees creativity as the most important human resource of all. Because without creativity, there will be no progress, because people will be doing the same thing all over. They won't be looking at better ways of doing things. Like, for example, discovering electricity and discovering artificial intelligence, discovering a television or cell phone. We will still be using the same things without questioning anything. And that is why creativity is so important. It's for progress, but it is also to prevent us from making the same mistakes. Although if you look into the history of mankind, you can actually see that we repeat our mistakes constantly. And that is where the second quote from Oliver Sacks is so important. We need to see creativity as a power to originate. We need to break away from how we look at things. We need to challenge the way we look at things. We need to challenge the status quo. We mustn't just accept everything, but we mustn't, I would also say, don't go in the street and start burning shops and all sorts of things because you don't agree, but we need to challenge what is happening in our world. And we need to also use our imagination freely so that that imagination can help us to create a future that we would like to see, the world that we would like to live in, the world that we would like to leave for our children and grandchildren and the people after that. We also need creativity to create and recreate the worlds fully. And while we're doing this, we also need to look at it with a critical eye. And that is where the whole brain creativity comes in. We cannot just imagine and just come up with ideas. Somewhere along the line, we need to look at it from a critical perspective and actually see if it can work. So we need to analyze the ideas that we actually create. Another reason why creativity is so important is because with creativity, we can see what can be. We can imagine new futures. Creativity also helps us to invent, to experiment, to take risks, to break rules, to make mistakes, to grow, and not to forget having fun. We forget to play. We forget to have fun. We forget to connect to our childlike and inner child world. And to be truly creative, we need to connect to these elements. In addition, what is nice about creativity, the more you use creativity, the more you have creativity. Okay, so if you try to be creative every day, do something to enhance your creativity, you will see in 21 days, because that is how long they say you need to form a habit, that is where you will actually see that you are growing in terms of your creative thinking. And I will share some ideas of how you can spark your creativity moving into the future. I think creativity is also very important for breaking out of established patterns. And that is where you need to look at things from different perspectives. You cannot just accept the way that things has been for years. okay, we need to challenge our own minds, because we also like to be in our status quo, to join the status quo, to be comfortable, not to upset anything, and just accept things and be calm and not cause any conflict. But creativity is not about causing conflict. It is about finding better ways of looking after the health of society, finding better ways to educate ourselves, our children, our communities, and even the world, to come up with ideas of how we can protect our planet, how we can save our planet. Especially if you look at what is currently written, is that we have only 10 years to actually try and turn around the effects of climate change. And 10 years is not a lot of time. It will be in 2050. So if we don't do anything, if we just accept that somebody somewhere will do something, that is not what we need to, what we should do. We need to be creative. We need to start sharing ideas, and not with ourselves, with a broader community as well. And creativity can also help us to improve our economy. However, there's also barriers to individual creativity specifically that I would like to highlight. And while I'm going through this, I would like you to actually think about these barriers and identify the barriers that actually impacts on you at a personal level. So the first barrier is our search for a right answer. And I think that is where our schooling system played a huge role. 1 + 1 is 2, right? So there's only one right answer for 1 + 1. 1 + 1 is not 11. But if we look at it, 1 plus a 1, you put it together, it can be 11. I'm just saying it's not, but our answer is we need one answer, and that's the correct answer, and that is what you will get a mark for, and that is how you will progress in school, and that is how you will actually get good marks, and you can actually choose a university or a higher education institution where you would like to study. So stop searching for that right answer. There's more answers than just one answer. Now, I think the people in science and in finance might say, no, that is not what I believe, but consider it. Don't always get stuck in the right answer. The next one is being logical. Now, I think as adults, we always want to be logical. We don't want to be seen as somebody that's not logical and somebody that cannot think for themselves. But stop being the logical one. Start being the dreamer. Blindly following rules, not asking questions. Now, my husband looked at this comment and he said, yes, he follows rules blindly because he comes from the apartheid days where every white South African male had to go to the army, and there you had to follow rules or you die. So that kind of mindset is still part of his mindset today. However, it is important to ask questions. You cannot, especially in our VUCA world, and especially with wicked problems, rules needs to be questioned. Now, I don't want you to become a rebel, right? I want you to be responsible when you ask about the rules and why the rules exist. And isn't there a better way of doing things than just forcing people to do the same thing? Constantly being practical. You don't want to be theoretical. You don't want to dream. You want it to be practical. It must work. Then also seeing play as being silly. Now, I think a lot of adult males will really think if I encourage you to start playing with little toy cars or basically think about an imaginary friend, all of a sudden you will really think, no, this guy's really out of her mind. She's crazy. And I don't want to look silly, but start playing, okay? Start small. You don't need to really go out of your way and turn into a child, but you need to connect to the childlike nature and the heart of a child to actually connect to your inner creativity more and your imagination. Then to be creative, we need to be somebody that understands a lot of things, be a generalist. Because if you focus on being too much of a specialist in an area, you basically lose out on the things that happens around you. And that is where silo thinking comes in, where people stick to what they know, they stick to the fields that they are familiar with, and they don't want to connect different specializations and actually see what can happen from it. So the barrier here is that you shouldn't be too specialized, and you should be open to actually break down the silos and see that if you are in business, how can art actually help me to become a better business person? How can engineering help me to become a better person and better business person? How can science be used to actually help the company to grow and become a better business, adapting to the VUCA environment that we're in? In avoiding ambiguity, you just want it to be straight and narrow, right and wrong. You don't want anything to be unclear, no gray areas. Then also the fear of looking foolish, and that ties back to play, looking silly, looking foolish. You know, if you start coming up with ideas, people might say, oh, what happened to this guy? I mean, what happened? Did something fall on her head? For all of a sudden, she comes up with these weird and wonderful, not even wonderful, but rather crazy ideas. But we shouldn't be. We should allow people to actually be a bit foolish. Not laughing at them, but enjoying the fact that we can all be silly. We can all be a little bit foolish instead of fearing being foolish or looking foolish. We as people also, we don't want to make mistakes. We also don't want to fail. But if we look at creativity, you need to realize that you will make mistakes and there will be times that you will be failing, and you need to open yourself to embrace that rather than to fear that. And then the biggest problem is that most people believe they are not creative. And it is because they see creativity as an artist or a magician or somebody that can write wonderful poetry or coming up with the best music ever. So that is not creativity in itself, as I explained. All of us are creative. It is our superpower, basically, that we were born with. We had this power since the beginning of time, and it's something that actually helps us to become better, to grow, to develop, to evolve as humans. So don't think that you are not creative. You are. All of us just have a different degree of creativity, but we can develop this creativity. Also, failure to ask questions can be a barrier. Failure to record our ideas, failure to revisit our ideas can also be a barrier. Failure to express ideas, we just keep it for ourselves. We don't go back to ideas. And I think if you come up with an idea, with me in any way, just before I fall asleep, I come up with an idea and then I fall asleep. And the next day, I totally forgot this wonderful idea. Now, if I come up with an idea, I actually record it. And the next day, when I actually forgot about it, I can go back and say, oh, okay. So now I can revisit it and maybe add something different and see what will happen. Even going back to your recorded ideas in a month from now, in a year from now, you will see that you can actually enhance that idea so much, and you can come up with a brilliant idea. We also need to think in new ways. We need to challenge the way we see things, the way we think about things, the mindsets that we have. We also need to wish for more, because this is where your imagination comes in. If we think about a better world, a better life, that is where we start wishing for more things and a better life. We also need to constantly try and being creative. It might be difficult in the beginning, but the more you practice, the more creative you become. You must also keep trying, as I say, in general, not give up. And we need to tolerate creative behavior, especially if somebody is trying but they're failing. We need to encourage them to continue. In terms of the business environment or in organizations, there are definite creativity killers that we need to be aware of. The first one is organizational processes and procedures, specific ways of doing things without allowing any person to think about doing things better, smarter, but rather we are forced to stick with those processes. Workloads as well, the higher a person's workload is, the less creative a person can be. So the workloads need to be managed carefully. Outdated technology can also cause us to not be creative because we're kind of stuck in how things were done. We're not challenged to use the latest technology and to enhance our creativity in that way. Also, when there's spaces that's uninspired, it's dull, there's no plants, we all sit in a little cubicle, there's no space to talk and chat, that can also kill creativity. Our organizational culture that is very strict, don't tolerate failures, don't tolerate people being creative and sharing ideas, that can actually kill creativity. And then your leader's mindset can also cause an issue, because if they are not creative, if they don't understand creativity and the importance of it, they will not manage you in that perspective. Others are the hierarchy. If there's a lot of red tape, it can restrict creativity and even kill it. If we have job profiles, we actually employ a person to do a job. You don't employ a person for the possibilities of what this person can create for the organization by being creative, by coming up with innovative ideas that can actually help the business to grow. But you are just employed for that job profile, people can also stop being creative. If things are overcomplicated, it can also cause creativity to get killed, because it's very difficult to actually understand things, and you would rather like to think of it, the knowledge, and think of it step by step to try and understand this overcomplication. And then silo working, the HR department is doing this, the operational department is doing this, we don't know what each other is doing, so we don't understand the impact that one has on the other, and that can also kill creativity. If there's no resources for us to be creative, like time to be creative, time to relax a bit, that can be a problem. And then if everything is reports and approval driven, you won't be creative, because creativity is open to failure and open to experimentation. And in a report and approvals, that doesn't fit together. So if you want to become more creative in organizations, you need to remove these barriers. Creativity enablers. Now, this is the very important part that we need to get to today, is how can we actually become more creative? Because as far as we could actually follow the discussion, is that creativity is important. And the more creative you are, the more creative you become. But what should we do? So the first step is that we need to understand what creative thinking is. We need to understand the process of creative thinking. We also need to understand that creative intelligence is as important as our IQ, as well as our street smart intelligence. Creative intelligence with our thinking skills and understanding the process of creativity can help us to become more creative. We also need to nurture our own creativity, our own self-efficacy, as well as the creative self-efficacy of others. We need to create workspaces that is actually creative and can spark ideas. We also need to remember that if we want to be creative, we need to bring people together that is very diverse, and we need to exchange our views creatively. So that is part of the creative spaces. If you paint a building blue or green, a room blue or green, they say that that can actually spark creativity. If we bring in elements of nature, they say that that can spark creativity. If we create places where people can just come together and share ideas, have a board, a thinking board, and you can just slot some ideas on a board and somebody else come and they add to it, you can actually create ideas like that. But people need to be diverse. So the more diversity you have in a workspace, the more creative your workspace and the workforce will become. You also need to have time for creative mindfulness. All right. So when I talk about creative mindfulness, I talk about becoming quiet in yourself, appreciate creativity for what it is, actually take a break, stepping away from the issues, and yeah, they say that yoga is also very good to connect your creative mindfulness as well. And then very important is that creativity grows the more you share it. So the more you collaborate with people, the more you talk about it with people, that is when your creativity becomes more important. And then finally, in terms of your creative enablers, in a working environment, it's very important to also reward creativity, provide some incentives, accept failure, provide some sources that will inspire, provide some resources that can help people think more creatively, align your objectives, your mission, your vision, your values of your organization with innovation objectives, and even adding the importance of creativity, and then promoting a new culture, a creative and innovative culture. Now, to grow your creativity, there's a few things that you can do, and I think there's about 4 slides in terms of how you can create your creativity, and I'm just going to mention it. You can make a note of it if you like. First of all, you need to start changing your routine. You need to move out of your comfort zone. Secondly, you need to think about your brain health. Eating good food, using omega-3, including nuts in your daily eating habits, for example. You also need to start learning new things. And I would like to challenge you that you learn something new every day. Start looking for opportunities to learn. And the more you learn, that will also spark some ideas that you didn't have before. I'm doing a course in terms of artificial intelligence, and that actually sparked some ideas in my views as well, something that I didn't know exists, but now I can connect the dots. So by learning new things, it can help you to become more creative. We also need to look at problems as opportunities and not problems, and that will also change the way we will think about things. We also need to challenge the status quo, especially if somebody is saying, but that is how we've done it for always. We don't want to change because it's working. Why change something that works? Now that is exactly where you need to start changing something. Then you need to build an idea library, and that is what I mentioned before, where you actually record your ideas and you can go back to it, but you also ask other people to share their ideas, and you create an idea library and a forum where you can share ideas and come up with ways of solving our wicked problems, for example. And the more you collaborate, the more diverse the collaboration is, the more the idea library will grow and become something very important in an organization and in a community and even in a country. Another important aspect is that we need to find time to be creative. Now, I know if you're a mom or a dad and you're working and you've got children and a mother still needs to go home to cook and clean, there is no time. But I want to ask you to at least make a 15-minute time a day where you can just focus on being creative. Then thinking outside the box, also there's the view of thinking inside the box, think within different boxes. So it's about thinking differently. Challenge yourself. If you come across something and you think about it in a certain way, now swap it over. So okay, if I want to support something, if my normal thinking is, yes, I agree, now I need to take a view of, no, I don't agree, and think about it in that perspective. And then you also need the opinions of other people, because their opinions is important and they can even spark some ideas to become better. To grow your creativity, it's also important, and I mentioned this, is basically to write your ideas down in a journal. The reason for this is that it affirms the cognitive behavior of observation. So the more you record your ideas, the more your cognitive behavior of observation will grow, and you will also be able to make greater associations between ideas that is totally random or different from each other. An example of that is where you basically have a wheel and you have a gym shoe, and basically now you have roller skates. You had music and you had TV, two different things, and MTV were created. Now the little baby, the baby is not looking at its nappy to see if there's an issue, because that's what my husband told me. What's that baby doing? No, it's about looking at things from a different angle. That actually helps you to create a physical distance between you and the problem, and it starts encouraging your abstract thinking. So for example, if you look at it from the perspective of looking up, looking sideways, looking down, taking a view of being positive or negative towards that idea, it gives you a different perspective. Sleeping is very important. So never feel guilty when you sleep, because sleep is where your problems can actually form creative ideas, because you are linking to your subconscious mind. You're making some connections because your stress levels is low. And the only way to truly tap into your subconscious is when you sleep. But you need to have deep sleep as well. So look after the way you sleep so that you can come up with good ideas. Now, Paul McCartney said that he wrote the song Yesterday because it came to him in a dream. Now, I'm sure that if you dream, you can remember certain things. And you might ask, now, why am I dreaming this? And sometimes the clues that we get from our subconscious can be amazing, but we need to start analyzing it. We need to try and remember it. We need to see what are the new connections that our subconscious mind is trying to do. Okay, we're running all out of time, so I will make it quickly. I will hurry up, I mean. Okay, and then walking, very important. Why is walking important? Because it can help us with idea generation. There's blood flow, we feel free, we can relax, and your mind can wander. And did you know that Elon Musk actually came up with the idea of Tesla while he was walking? So you can see that walking can lead to amazing ideas. Persistence is also very important, not giving up. The more you come up with creative ideas, the more you have a chance of actually breaking through and finding that brilliant idea. Picasso, for example, had 50,000 pieces that he worked with in his lifetime. Not all the 50,000 ever became famous. The same with Edison. He had 3,000 different designs for bulbs, and eventually he found the right one. And then we also need to think about coming up with a lot of ideas, many ideas. So focus on ideas, inventions, and slogans. And the best practice is often to combine ideas. So here, Nike's, you know, their slogan, "Just Do It," was actually inspired by a spree killer, Gary Gilmore. Now, when Gary Gilmore was standing in front of a 5-man shooting people that want to shoot him, sorry, I can't remember what it's called, a shooting peloton or whatever, his words was actually, "Just do it. Let's do it. Just do it." And Nike actually took that slogan and it became a good slogan for Nike. So they took something that is actually a horrible event, but at that point it made such an impact that they built their business around it. The same with Post-it notes. There was a discarded idea of adjectives and it didn't work. And they actually came and say, let's take this idea and make it work. We also need to put some constraints when we want to be creative, because if we create constraints, it actually enhances our creativity. For example, if you think about a vacuum cleaner, when it was originally created, it consisted of a box fan, a soap box, a pillowcase, and a broom handle. And that is how they made a vacuum cleaner. Now, if you think about it, that looks very complex, but that was the first vacuum cleaner and the idea. Then Dr. Seuss, when he wrote his specific Green Eggs and Ham, he said that he wanted to write a story with less than 50 words. And that was his limitation, the 50 words. And he actually succeeded by writing Green Eggs and Ham. Showers, the best place to think about ideas, especially to make associations and also to tap into our subconscious. And the fact about showers is also good because that is where our dopamine, our feel-good hormone, is part of dopamine, as well as serotonin, are being released. So if we think about it, 72% of people actually have the best ideas when they're in the shower. So that is what I'm saying. If you have those ideas, you can't write it down, but have a recorder close by so that you can record your ideas. And then we need to look for inspiration everywhere. And here the spontaneity of our random associations is very important. And we need to think of how can we expose ourselves to new experience, new ideas and new ways of thinking. And if we think about Newton, when the apple fell on his head, it was a very random act, but it actually helped him to create something that he could understand, create a gravity from, and actually explain that to mankind. So basically, ladies and gentlemen, to survive a VUCA world, to survive the fourth industrial revolution, to move past COVID-19, to look at climate change, poverty, hunger, corruption, and wars, and many other wicked problems, we need to use the power of creativity. Creativity is individual and a collective thing, so both are important. However, the new power consists of our curiosity, our imagination, our creativity, our innovation, and applied knowledge. So, creativity stands out as the new power, but we need to use creativity for good, because creativity can help us to enhance our well-being and transform our lives. We can no longer just accept a system, education or otherwise, that fails to cherish and nourish everyone, especially the diversity of mankind. And we also cannot disregard our collective creativity and innovation for good, because we need to consider the interconnectivity of everything on the planet. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the end. Creativity is power. If you want to find out more about this webinar or any other webinars, you can feel free and contact these people on the slide. And then something to look forward to next week is a webinar on looking at the practical aspects of ethics, the accessibility and impact of ethics. Thank you, Sarah. Back to you.
Thank you, Ziska. I'm going to launch your last two polls for you, so you can test if everyone was listening.
Okay. So please fill in the poll so I can see if you listened, but I'm just playing what. I would like your views, and thank you for attending today's webinar, and I hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so the first poll is looking at elements of power. So here it is curiosity, imagination, creativity, innovation, and applied knowledge is the new power. Yes or no? Awesome. 100% almost says yes. All right, wonderful.
Sorry, Ziska, I got kicked off there for a minute.
Okay.
I'm back.
It's fine. Just give it
Okay.
10 seconds still. I think they can just vote a bit more.
I did finish the poll. Do you want to see the results?
All right, 100%. Cool, wonderful. So don't forget it. We need our curiosity, we need our imagination, we need creativity, we need innovation, we need our applied knowledge. And by doing that, we actually create creativity that is power. Okay, the second poll, or the third poll. The third poll is the best way to develop creativity as a power is to, and there are 5 options.
Okay, the votes are coming in. We're about 48%, 51%.
Okay.
74%.
Okay, I think you can give it 10 seconds again. So let's see what's the overall view.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All the above, that is correct. So yes, we need to use our creativity every day. We need to learn new things. We need to change our daily routines and move out of our comfort zone. And we need to collaborate with diverse people. And there are many more ways of actually developing our creativity. But in this case, it's all the above. So thank you very much for completing the polls. I think we can just go back to some questions. If there's any questions that some of the people wanted to ask. Sarah, you can guide us in this, please.
Okay, if you do have any questions, you're welcome to type it in the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand and we will open up your mic. I'm just going to launch our final poll where you can rate our webinar for today, and I'll also give you a few minutes to type in your questions if you have. I do have a comment from our Tande. Thanks, Prof. Ziska. Very interesting and insightful session. May I request for the slides for the attendees, please? So you will receive the link this afternoon, and it will provide access to the slides. So if you did receive the reminder email, you will also receive the email that goes out. It will provide a link to the website where the slides will be there and the video. It will also have a separate link on that mailer that where you can download the PDF slides. Fanon says it was an insightful session. Tebogo says, are there any formal training or courses offered on this subject? It is very interesting and many people may not know where to start and how. Very interesting, I must say.
That's awesome. I am, as you heard in the introduction, I'm part of the World Creativity and Innovation Week, as well as Day. It is between the 15th and the 21st of April. We will be having some training sessions that will be for free, and we will be covering a lot of these specific things. But yes, there's going to be some training in future. If you are interested, Sarah, you can send them my email address as well with the link if you don't mind. I don't know if you can do it or if I can share it with them now. Please contact me if you are interested in additional training and so forth, and we can look at it. Sarah, can I give them the email or will you send it?
What we will do is if they contact the details on the previous slide, and then where needs be, we can filter it directly to you.
All right,
Cindy,
that's awesome. Okay.
Okay.
So the previous slide is this, the contact center for UKZN Extended Learning. So you can contact any of these two people if you are interested to learn more and to know more and to find out if there's additional training happening. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, so you can contact either of them and then we can help where we can. If we need to get Prof involved, we'll also get her involved. Albertando says, thank you very much. Linda says, inspiring, thank you. Taboho says, awesomeness, please invite us, or yes, send the link. Thank you very much. Nicolene says, thank you, it was awesome. Fanon says, how can one align their areas of expertise to maximize their creative power?
Yes, you can. But that is a discussion in itself. So it's not something that's going, and I'm also over time already, but I think if you can contact me, we can chat about it. I also saw a question on Teams where somebody asked about how can you actually create a forum where ideas can be shared. And that is also something that will need a bit more explanation, and we can look at that as well. So please contact me if possible, and we can talk about it.
Okay, great. I'm not seeing any more questions at the moment. But if you do also want to contact Prof. Siska, when we do send the mailer out this afternoon, there is an option to click here for feedback or comments. And if you do have something specific for her, you can type it in there and I can forward it directly to her to respond to you. And then she'll have your email address and everything. Yeah, so thank you very much for presenting today, Prof. And for sharing with us on the power of creativity and inspiring us to tap into our creativity a bit more. Thank you as well to our attendees for joining and engaging in the webinar. So as I mentioned, the video and the slides will be available on our website, and we'll send out this direct link as soon as it's ready and uploaded. So do take note of the upcoming webinar and do RSVP to secure your place. Next week, we'll be featuring a webinar on Let's Be Practical about ethics, the accessibility and impact of ethics, and that will be facilitated by Professor Paulus Zulu. So he was the former Morris Web Relations head of that unit at UKZN. Yeah, but you can find out more about all of our programs and all of our webinars by taking a look at our website, and that's www.ukznextendedlearning.com. Otherwise, we hope you enjoyed the session today. Stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.